Hey everyone, Autopilot's in a pretty odd spot right now. Case in point, MKBHD, a small YouTuber you've probably never heard of, recently reviewed Tesla's full self-driving beta, and during his drive, he talks about the car being in the aggressive autopilot setting, but for some reason, the car was staying in the slow lane and not passing the slower traffic ahead. The problem here is the settings he's talking about don't apply to the version of autopilot he was using, aka the software stack, which in this case was navigate on autopilot and not the full self-driving beta where those settings would have applied. The settings he was looking for are somewhere else completely, hidden in additional menus. You know the system is in a pretty rough place when one of the biggest tech reviewers on YouTube, whose entire job it is to understand technology like this, can't figure it out completely. And if he can't figure it out, what chance does Grandma Betty have? Zero chance. Grandma Betty has zero chance of figuring it out. I really don't like that you have to go down a rabbit hole to figure out how these things are supposed to function. Hopefully version 11, which has been coming out in the next week or two for the last several months, will address a lot of these issues, but for now, we do have a new full self-driving beta update, which is 10.69.3.3. So let's go on a drive where it will remain on the full self-driving stack and not switch to highway to see how well it does. We'll get right into it after I tell you about this video's sponsor, private internet access. Many websites, companies, and internet service providers collect data about you which you involuntarily give up, like where you're connecting from, what kind of device you're using, what sites you're visiting, and for how long, etc., which is then stored and sold to the highest bidder, meaning you are quickly becoming a product yourself. Virtual private networks protect your privacy by routing your internet traffic through secure tunnels and spoofing your IP address, which makes you more difficult to track and helps to conceal your digital footprint. PIA has been my VPN of choice for years now, mainly because of their commitment to never storing any kind of user data whatsoever and also being completely open source, meaning you can take a look under the hood and see exactly how it works. They have other benefits as well, such as having servers in all 50 US states, which allows a lot of additional functionality over competing VPNs. It works on all major streaming services to unlock region-locked content, which is a feature I use a lot, and they also offer a 30-day risk-free money-back guarantee, so you can try it without any risk. If you sign up using my special link, you can get 83% off an additional 4 months free, which comes out to about $2 a month, a small price to pay for privacy in my opinion. Thanks again to PIA for being a sponsor of this channel. All right, let's get into it. I'm going to be starting off in a random parking lot in Pittsburgh, and you can see on the nav we have a right turn to make. Tried to engage autopilot a little bit too early, but after it loaded, second time was successful. Has its left turn signal on, and for some reason decides it wants to make a left instead of a right. Not sure exactly why it did this, but I do just let full self-driving do its thing, and it does reroute with a new navigation path. There was a couple instances in this drive where the car had to reroute because it was in the wrong lane or something, but I always think it's more interesting to just let it go to see how it handles it rather than just taking over. Kind of an interesting situation here. This person who just passed us on the right was tailgating us for a long time, and you can hear them start honking and then just cut over in the lane to make this left-hand turn, no signal, no nothing. Just human driver things, I suppose, but the beta does a pretty nice job of not slowing down too much. And speaking of going slow, it sure feels like we are just crawling through these roads right now. I feel like I am the slowest car on the road, but the beta is going the speed limit. I have the settings in average, and for it to not go over the speed limit, sometimes it just feels really, really slow, especially compared to human traffic around. We do have some pedestrians crossing the street ahead, and you can see it tracks them from a long ways away, but it doesn't slow down early enough, I think, and that's a little bit uncomfortable. Me driving myself, I would slow down pretty much as soon as I see the pedestrians, but the beta kind of just keeps on going until it needs to slow down, which does feel a little uncomfortable. You can see a mail truck pull out in front of us, and then they decide to stop in front of somebody's house. The beta handles the vehicle stopping pretty well and pretty smoothly, but it doesn't seem like it immediately wants to go around. This is one of those kind of tougher than it first appears situations where it can't really see beyond the car in front, and it doesn't know if there's another car there just backed up at the stop sign or if it should go around. ends up just kind of sitting here. But then we get a pretty good indication when the brake lights go off and the door opens. You can see on the visualization, it actually does start to plan a path around, but then those brake lights come back on the visualization and it just stays put. I tried to let it go as long as I could without feeling too awkward, but yeah, this was a disengagement. I then tried to re-engage to see if that would like reset something, but that didn't work either. This was a little unfortunate. There is some pretty good indications that this van is now parked and not something that we should be sitting behind. So a little unfortunate that I needed to intervene in that situation. I do feel like older software versions would have probably been able to handle that, but I do understand that situations like that are probably a little bit more difficult than they first appear as far as when to pass a stopped car near a stop sign. We do have a few speed bumps on this road. You can see the first one it slowed down for pretty nicely. I think it was down to 17 or 18 miles an hour, which felt pretty natural and probably about the speed I would be going, although it may be slowed down a little bit later than I would have. Same thing with the next one right here. Slows down right before we hit it, which was nice. But then on the third one it's approaching, does not slow down at all. The speed bumps are kind of a thing in the FSD beta where it feels like it just kind of picks and chooses which ones to slow down for and which ones not to. I have no idea why, but you'll see later in this video too, it just does not slow down for some pretty obvious speed bumps sometimes, and I have no idea why. I also think it's interesting that it used to visualize these speed bumps and it no longer does. I wonder what that's all about and if they're tweaking something behind the scenes. Approaching a roundabout ahead that we have to turn left through, and it's actually kind of an impossible navigation route because you can see where that car is backing up to our left. There's a closed gate. Also starts highlighting that vehicle in blue, thinking it's something it needs to yield to. So it kind of was really slow through this intersection. You can also see it highlighting random parts of the road there on the visualization, but does end up continuing through the roundabout. Then when it does try to make this right-hand turn, I did feel a little bit awkward next to this guy who just parked. He's probably like, what the heck are you doing? So I just disengaged and parked real quick until I could get a new navigation route in. I normally would have let that one go a little bit longer to see if it would have stopped itself at the gate. I mean, it was visualizing something there, as you probably saw, and told us how many inches away we were. But with a person sitting in their car like that, like staring directly at me, I just felt like it would probably be better in that instance to just get the heck out of there. We're approaching a stoplight that we have to turn right at, and there are some obstructions to the left. There is a truck carrying a truck in front of us, and on the visualizations it just shows as a regular truck, which is pretty interesting. Also, you can see it puts that creep limit way out there, but never actually goes all the way out there. You can see it waits to make sure this truck was turning, and then just proceeds pretty early on, which felt good. Something that continues to not feel good, though, is its lane decision-making for upcoming turns. So we have a left turn to make in probably quarter of a mile, knows it needs to be in the left lane. You can see it highlighting the lane a few times, but just doesn't get over until the last minute. Right when somebody's in our blind spot is when it decides to put on its turn signal and is actually forced to make the lane change in the intersection in order to get over there in time. This is just not needed. There was a lot better times it could have gotten over it if it would have just done it earlier. Really hoping version 11 makes some improvements here. You can also see there's a plastic bag in the road. Nothing shows up in the visualizations, but we do get a little swerve to avoid it. Not actually sure if there was anything in that plastic bag. I couldn't really tell, but I am glad that we avoided it. You can see some old ground markings on the road to tell us to merge right. This becomes one lane. Seems like it takes this a little too seriously and goes all the way to the right. This actually makes the person in front of us think that we're turning right here, and they pull out in front of us. I don't blame them. That is something I hit the snapshot button for so that data would get sent back to Tesla, because that was not very comfortable. There's a lot of things that happen really quick here, so I'm going to go ahead and slow things down to half speed so I can kind of talk through it better. You can see we have a car. I mean, the visualizations don't do it justice, but we have a car that was tailgating us pretty hardcore. Then we have a cyclist that was approaching from the right who seems like he wants to cross the street. The beta does react to this and comes to a smooth stop, which was appreciated so we didn't get rear-ended. Person behind us does not like this and actually creeps all the way forward until they're inches away from our bumper. The beta actually seems like it reacts to this and highlights their car in blue and starts moving forward a little bit to put some distance between us and the car behind, which I've never seen it do before. It then waits for the pedestrian to cross ahead so that the person behind us can continue tailgating us. Human drivers, man, I swear. I could see her swinging her hands all over the place, visibly frustrated that we were letting pedestrians go through a crosswalk. I mean, geez, how dare us, right? I just don't get people sometimes. We have a left turn to make ahead, and the beta gets into this suicide lane a little bit too early, in my opinion. You can see just how far away the turn is, and we're just chilling in this suicide lane. We really didn't have to. This turn does end up being into a gated community, so after I allowed the car to do the unprotected left, I went ahead and disengaged. Even though the gate was open and we probably could have gotten out, I just don't feel comfortable going into somebody's gated community to test full self-driving out. So I go ahead and disengage, flip around, and put in a new navigation point. Something interesting happens when we re-engage autopilot though. The street we're turning onto kind of appears to be a 2-lane road, but it's actually not. And when autopilot makes the right turn, it ends up staying in the parking lane. Then forces us to take over immediately and tells us autosteer was aborted for a system error, which I find pretty interesting. Not sure exactly what the error was, because as soon as I re-engaged it, obviously knew it was a parking lane and went out of it pretty quick. But yeah, another forced disengagement there. Here we have a roundabout, and autopilot has not been doing too great at roundabouts lately. Especially in these last few versions, it is way overly cautious. Coming to a full stop was very unnecessary here. The turn signal, the right-hand turn signal was uncomfortable and is obviously confusing that truck driver. Just super awkward. I honestly think that if they just disabled turn signals completely at roundabouts, it would be so much better than what it's doing right now. Every time I'm at a roundabout, the turn signals just go wild. Approaching the end of our navigation route up here, and since it was kind of a dead end, I just went ahead and let the car pull over since there was no traffic around. Once I do set a new navigation route, the car actually takes off without the navigation route being completely in the system. And you can see it was going to go around this roundabout, but then decided to go left into this boatyard. Luckily, it stopped before going through the entrance. You can kind of see it's showing a barrier right there. The gate's actually open, so I'm not sure why it's showing that barrier all the way across, but I wasn't going to let it go through there anyway. The navigation route finally does set on the car, but obviously the beta is not yet capable of backing up, so I did have to do this part myself. Some bad luck engaging autopilot on the first try in this video, but on we go. Another bit of an interesting situation up here where we have a Prius off to the right here backing up into the street from this intersection. You can see the visualizations froze there for a second. It was controlling for them the whole time. It highlighted their car in blue, so did a good job. But I have a theory about the visualizations freezing every once in a while. It always seems to be when something not crazy happens, but something kind of unique like that. I think that might be an automatic clip that's being collected to send back to Tesla. I have no way to prove this, obviously, but we did hear about that in AI Day, where they can request the car to give it certain situations and just, you know, have the fleet send them. A car facing the wrong way going through the intersection might qualify for that. So I don't know, but just a theory. Here was one where a manual snapshot was required, though. The car came to a complete stop at this intersection for seemingly no reason at all. Not ideal. As you can see, the boat being pulled behind that car shows up as a mini semi-truck, which I just find hilarious. Then something else happens that I haven't seen before. It's kind of hard to see, but our navigation path shows us going down this street and then making a U-turn and then going back onto the same street. This has got to be some glitch with the map data or something. I have no idea why it would decide to do this. Obviously says unable to complete the maneuver, please assist now, and since the beta is not capable of doing a U-turn like this, I do end up having to disengage and do this part myself again. Seemed like there's a lot of stuff like this in this video so far. Really hoping that the beta and summon are going to be on the same stack eventually. I was really hoping it would have been here by now, but that'll give us a lot more functionality and make the car be able to handle more scenarios like that. Do have a little bit of a pinch point ahead. We have a truck incoming and some parked cars off to the right, so beta chooses not to squeeze through there, which was wise, pulls off to the side of the road and slowly goes around. Up ahead, we have another example of a fairly obvious speed bump being completely ignored. I thought this was going to be a pretty large speed bump, so I ended up taking over and slamming on the brakes myself. It would be an understatement if I said that I am a little disappointed with Autopilot's speed bump detection right now. I'm not going to lie. I feel like it was way better before, so not sure what's been happening in recent versions. End of our navigation route is through the fence in front of us. Obviously can't make it through that, and you can see it hunting for a way through here. Kind of starts going to the left. It almost seemed like it wanted to make this U-turn, so I did let it go as long as it kind of wanted to, but eventually it did kind of just get stuck and then just said, okay, we've reached our navigation. Here we are. So went ahead and put in another navigation point, and away we go. You can see I also did actually try to override the accelerator pedal here, just because I thought it might want to make the U-turn, but no. Didn't want to do that. It was just going to head straight. Autopilot doing a fairly good job, or actually seemingly doing a very good job, avoiding these branches here off to the right-hand side in the overhang. But then things fall apart, and it goes really close to these hedges, and again, it does not react to this speed bump at all. So I do end up taking over again for the same speed bump. I'm not sure if it's just my car or something, but I actually feel like the earlier versions of 10.69 were a bit more reliable than the current one has been. I have not been getting as good of performance as I normally do, especially in these last couple updates. We are on this same road with the same 25-mile-an-hour speed limit here, which just feels so slow. Can't really blame the car here. It's going as fast as it legally can, but I just feel like the absolute slowest person on the road, getting passed up by absolutely everybody. Kind of an interesting discussion about self-driving cars and obeying all the laws, because obeying all the laws kind of makes you a nuisance on the road. Autopilot turning on its turn signal to get into the left-hand lane to follow our route, which was the correct thing to do, but then changes its mind when the truck to our left does not let us in. This is fine, and it's okay to abandon lane changes when you got rude people around you, but it never actually gets back into the left-hand lane to complete the route. So a little foreshadowing for you. You're also going to see a pedestrian walking off to our right and a car just being like inches away from him and trying to rush him. Like, yeah, he should be on the sidewalk, but I just think stuff like this is just unacceptable. Makes me happy that we're never going to see a move like that with a self-driving car. I mean, hopefully. You can see on the visualization, the car does appear to want to make a left-hand lane change again to get into the correct lane. Lot of opportunities to do it, and it flicks the turn signal on a couple times, but never is able to complete the maneuver for some reason. This situation was another head scratcher for me. No idea why it's doing this and why it has such a problem being in the lane that it knows that it should be in. But yeah, never was able to get over there. You can see just how much time it has to get over into the left-hand lane. So many opportunities of an empty lane next to it, and it just never does. And here we are at the intersection where we're basically going to be forced to turn right. You can see on the planned path it showed that it wanted to go left a few times, and with the way this drive was going so far, I thought it might, but it actually does just make the right turn, which I thought was nice. Good job, Autopilot, I guess. Definitely didn't have to be in that situation in the first place, but I am happy you abandoned the navigation route when it was the right thing to do. While we're fast forwarding, just want to thank you for being here and watching the video, especially if you're this deep into it. You guys really are what has turned this channel into what it is. It still blows me away all the time that this channel is as successful as it is. And yeah, I just really want to say I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Approaching the end of our drive here, but the car does get a little squirrely on this right-hand turn. Should have just followed the car in front, but you can see the ground markings with that bike lane might have thrown it off a little, and that turn probably wasn't as smooth as it could have been. The end of this navigation route does end up behind another fence. I seem to be really good at picking impossible destinations in this drive for some reason. But once it hit the end of the road here is when I did decide to stop recording. Some pretty odd creeping behavior though. You'll see it start creeping forward. And at one point it seemed like it was pretty confident it could make it through there. You'll see one last big creep at the end here, but then that was pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye.